Iceland, a Nordic island nation in the North Atlantic Ocean, is regularly ranked among the world's happiest nations. It also ranks highly on many other indices, such as gender equality and human development. Today, I will talk to my guest about the Icelandic culture, happiness, and gender equality. My guest is Dr. Vidar Halldorsson, a sociology professor at the University of Iceland. He is also the author of the book Sport in Iceland. Dr. Vidar, welcome to the program and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to start with the happiness thing. Why is Iceland regularly ranked among the world's happiest nations, especially in the United Nations World Happiness Report?
That's a very big question. And like with most big questions, there is no one single, simple answer to the question. I think it, relates to a lot of things about the location of Iceland, the small population, the community spirit in Iceland, the connections between people, the civic society. We are an affluent society. There are a lot of elements that, I think come into place, bits and bits here and there, which help make a society which has been beneficial for us in terms of our well-being.
Of course, because Iceland is a Nordic country. So, in the Nordic countries, the level of equality, social trust, these levels are very high. So can you talk a bit about these things in Iceland?
Yes. Iceland is an, isolated nation as an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So we have through the years, have our own specific culture, our own language, and Iceland has been an homogeneous nation in terms of class and race. We're not a classless society, and we are becoming more multicultural in recent years and decades. However, generally, we have an affluent society. And we have, as the Nordic nations, we have a civic society which is built on, a very strong social welfare system, which provides schooling and healthcare for the whole population. And in terms of that, which I think we have a very strong infrastructure for our community, to build on, And I think this is a really important part, as in the other Nordic nations as well, In Iceland as well, I think there are a lot of good things of being a tiny population. We say sometimes in Iceland we have this 1 degree of separation between people, which means you only need to contact one person to get in contact with somebody you don't know. While in many big nations, it's a 3 degree of separation. You have to, get in contact with one person who knows this, who knows this person, who knows, et cetera, et cetera. So we have this proximity and closeness between the people. We don't know everybody, and when I go to the supermarket, I don't know most of the people. However, I know somebody who knows everybody. So we have this closeness between people. So Iceland is a little bit like, in these terms, like a big family, And when you have such a small community, you have a very strong feeling of togetherness. You have a very strong feeling of unity. There's a lot of pride in the Icelandic nations of being Icelanders and all that. And being an island nation, we tend to, stick together in terms of all kinds of things. And there's a famous theory by Emil Durkheim, talked about when communities and nations, they face outside dangers, and they were threatened from the outside, like in war or with the COVID, pandemic, it strengthens the bonds between the people, So I think we have a really strong, community based on 1 degree of separation, which provide us with a very strong feelings or sense of social capital, And social capital is a thing which is built on trust between people. It's built on helping each other out. It's built on, and it's very influential for our mental and social well-being, So I think we have a very strong social capital based on our small community and our island position,
The level of social trust, I think, is the same also in Iceland, like the other Nordic countries. So people in Iceland really trust each other a lot, right? I mean, no matter where they live, in the northern part or the southern part, all the Icelandic people, they have really high levels of trust in each other, and also in the government and the government institutions. They really trust that the government will deliver, and that the government will deliver the services that the citizens require, right?
Yeah, to some degree, yes. We don't have a complete harmony, and there are many people who, don't trust the government, and However, compared to some other places, where we score regularly very high on trust in all kinds of measures, international measures. However, this is not some kind of ideal place where everybody trusts each other. Of course, we have all kinds of conflicts and all that, and all kinds of ideas in Iceland. But generally, we score very high on trust. And why is that? I think it is because of the small community, because, we have to behave well, because we are very likely to, meet those people again. If we do some bad to people, we might meet them at the grocery store, or this is my friend's friends, or I meet them at the, next family gathering or whatever, So I think this proximity and this closeness of people, sort of, influences our behavior in this respect, that we, have to be good citizens, we have to behave well, we have to, and then we begin to trust other people as well. We have low crime rates in Iceland, and have been for, decades, very low rates of crime. So it's all part of the same element, I think, because we have a community which is rich in social capital. We have very strong social connections between people, and it provides us with opportunity to build a society which is high on trust and individual and collective well-being.
We can summarize it like this: like, Iceland is not a paradise, but it works really well compared to many other countries in the world.
Yes, but it depends on who you talk to. I think Iceland is doing very well generally, But of course, there are people who think, everything is not good here and the politicians are corrupt and all that, And we have all this as well. We have, of course, corruption in politics, and, we are not better humans than anybody else. We have all the human flaws that everybody else has, maybe more in some areas. However, as a sociologist, I believe that the society of Iceland, our communities, help us do better, than if our society and community would be more loose or not as well connected and stuff like that, So we have this social capital and trust, and it affects our well-being. And also in terms of well-being, well-being is and happiness is related to social relationships, And being in a big city, it's different than being in a small community, because when I go to the grocery store, I usually know some people there, hi, how are you doing, and all that. And all these little interactions between people, I call it social magic,
Okay.
When person A meets person B, when they meet and start to communicate, they start to exchange some, ideas and some interactions, some frames of references, some information, something which makes us smile or interesting, some ideas and stuff like that. So I call it social magic. So when people meet, something emerges, which didn't exist before the persons met, there is something which emerges out of the interactions of people. So in a small community, when you interact a lot with people all around you, your neighbors, people at the grocery store, and you know people everywhere, there's a lot of social magic in the air, and social magic is beneficial and good for us, and it's something which gives us pleasure and enlightens us, all kinds of things like this. I think are important in this respect,
Yeah.
So I don't think it's some major plan. We have to make the population more happy by doing this and this. I think it's more we have foundations which are beneficial for us to build on in terms of this.
I understand. I really like your idea of social magic. I will remember it. I never heard of it, but it sounds really cool. So
yeah, I'm developing these days a theory about social magic. I started writing a book about social magic because I think it's so important, especially in this age of the post-pandemic, post-COVID age, where we rely much more on technology and automation. The banks are closing, the grocery store sends food to your house. So we miss a lot of those chance encounters, and we are doing education online and all that, So we miss a lot of those encounters where we can experience opportunities to experience social magic by meeting people by chance and getting to know all kinds of things, which stimulate us and enlighten us and all that. So I think this is an interesting idea, and especially now in this terms of where technology is a little bit taking over many parts of our lives, and I want to argue taking over too many parts of our lives, which makes us lonely and isolated and unfulfilled, so it's all part of this big picture, really.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So now let's talk about the Icelandic history. So what was the 1975 Icelandic women's strike, and what role did it play in establishing gender equality in the country? I know it was a massive thing in the Icelandic history.
Yes, it was. Gender equality and the patriarchy in societies is a very strong, what Emil Durkheim called social fact. It's a social fact which is very strong social structure and very difficult to change. And this meeting, for instance, which has become very famous now, was that women in Iceland, grouped together to make women's voices heard. And request more equality and opportunities and all that, However, if you're going to change very strong social facts, which are grained into the social structures of society, like patriarchy, it takes a lot of time, And now we see only very recently, we have made some progress from this time in terms of gender equality, but it hasn't, it wasn't until a few years ago when there was a tipping point, there was a tipping point in this respect in Iceland, where women's rights, where women's experiences, where women's voices were heard, and equality has been growing a lot in the past 5 years or so, So all these major social changes, they take time. It's like a big ship which has to change course. And it has taken, 40, 50 years in Iceland to reach this progress we are experiencing now. But we are reaching it's a great progress in this time and place in terms of gender equality in Iceland. And the meeting you mentioned, was probably, a very strong,
movement. Strong.
Yeah, at the time, which planted some roots, in society, which began to grow, because the people, the daughters of the women who were there, they are now grown-ups and they are changing society, so it takes off in a generation to change society. So it was very important, and many things which have happened since then. We had the first elected president, women president, you know, with Vigdís Finnbogadóttir in 1980.
Yeah, I guess, 1980. I was reading history.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stepping stones along the way, but we experience now in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there has been a shift in momentum, really, where gender equality is becoming, much more equality than it has ever been,